Hey friends! It's 3 of 5 for the Magic in the Mundane series. I'm actually going to try out the new pastel green paper that I experimented on in the last video and do a whole piece on it and see how it handles it. See how I handle it. To see how we handle each other. First, I start off by sketching a few different thumbnails of different aspect ratios, just to get an idea of what paper size would work best. Hello. I'm here. I have my thumbnails here. They are all wildly different than the actual reference photo, but that's what art is. We're not copy machines. And of course, I sketch out the dynamic symmetry grid on my paper before I start sketching. And then using that grid, I sketch out the layout that I decided worked best for this paper size, paying attention to the angles and lines of the dynamic symmetry grid. When the line drawing is complete, I begin massing in the big shapes of color. Typically at this stage, I like to work dark to light, just so that I can get a good gauge of the values. It's actually really helpful that this paper is a dark to mid-tone, so that I can keep the shadows a bit darker than the paper and the highlights a bit lighter. I find it really important to work the whole canvas at this stage, just because everything exists in relation to one another. So you don't want to get too detailed in one area because you don't know what's going to develop across the canvas as a whole. Now, of course, you can plan all of that out beforehand. However, I like to stay open to experimenting because sometimes better ideas might just present themselves to you. It can be really tricky to work with branches in negative space. I find that if you lay down the branches initially and then color in around them, you're able to redefine the branches afterwards. A light and shadow piece such as this one really starts to come together when you add in the lighter values. I find when working with reflection on water, it's really important to align your verticals. You can see that here in the pool with the reflection of the trees. The theme of this piece is the sun and the light that it creates, backlighting everything in the scene. So I want to be very careful to only add in details that support this theme. The first problem I faced with this painting was the backlighting of the vapor coming off the roof. And I quickly found out that if I saturated this too much, it started to look like the house was on fire. And I definitely didn't want that, but I'll fix this later in the painting. The second issue is again with saturation. I definitely oversaturated the backlighting of this branch. But as I continue to work on this piece, and again relate one thing to another, one color to another, I'll figure it out. From this point on, I'm constantly stepping back to evaluate everything, making little adjustments to lines, shapes, colors, and values, until ultimately I'll be satisfied with the piece. Painting really is just a series of problems that we have to solve. I found it really difficult and challenging, but also rewarding in order to make everything feel as though it was backlit. The finished piece. I think it gives off an authentic sense of light and the feeling of warmth that you get when you step out into the early morning sun in the winter.